This video has the best keyboard and mouse Fortnite settings whether you're playing on PC or plugged into a console. Now, whether you're playing keyboard and mouse on console or on PC, the actual mouse and keyboard that you're using are just as important as your settings. So like I'm using this keyboard called the Melgeek Made 68 Pro, and they're sponsoring this video to show you what makes a keyboard pro. So this thing has an 8,000 hertz polling rate, which is the fastest you can get. It has a 0.1 to 4 millimeter actuation point that you can adjust with the high valve, and again, that's the fastest you can get. It has built-in rapid trigger, which is basically cheating for games like CSGO, Valorant, and even Fortnite's new ballistic mode because it makes you move faster and more steadily. It actually has magnetic switches that you can change out that feel really smooth. And maybe one of the coolest parts, it has a customizable light box to personalize your keyboard. Of course, none of that matters if it doesn't actually feel good, but it does. It also sounds really nice, and I just used it for 24 hours when I was learning keyboard and mouse, and I'm not even being biased when I say it's the best feeling keyboard that I've personally ever used. So I highly recommend it, and if you want to check it out, then it'll be in the link in the top of the description. So if you are playing on a PC, these are the display settings that I would recommend. Just default resolution, frame rate, you want it as high as your PC can hit consistently. Personally, I capped mine at 240 FPS. Now that is using performance mode, which again, I'd recommend if you're playing on PC. For graphics settings, I feel like the graphics right now are kind of dark in Fortnite, so I just turn my brightness up to 125%, and then the rest of my colorblind modes and stuff I just leave on default. On performance mode, 3D resolution definitely all the way up at 100, but everything else is on low or off. Over one to the audio tab, there's not much that actually matters in here besides visualized sound effects being turned on. After you do that, I mean, I play with sound quality on high and then 3D headphones turned off, so you can copy those if you want to, but really these two are just personal preference. But to the right of that will be the game tab, and this tab is super important, maybe just as important as the sensitivity. But I do recommend toggle sprint turned on and auto open doors turned on. And then for combat, hold to swap pickup I leave on. Auto pickup weapons is not good on keyboard and mouse. We literally have a scroll wheel, so you got to take advantage of that. But for preferred item slots, this is literally complete personal preference. On controller, there's definitely a best way to do it, but on keyboard, because there is so many buttons and some people want their AR on 6, their shotgun on 3, their pickaxe on 4. So on keyboard and mouse, the actual order of your loadout does not matter at all, so long as you remember the bind where you put your shotgun, the bind where you put your AR. But this next building section is massive. So reset building choices turned on. This doesn't really matter, but disabling pre-edit. This one's interesting on keyboard and mouse. I basically always tell controller players to disable pre-edits, but on keyboard and mouse, pre-edits can actually be super useful for when you retake a wall. You can catch players off guard, and you guys can do pre-edits insanely fast and then reset them really fast with scroll wheel. It's really easy for you guys compared to controller players. The only time that I'd say the keyboard and mouse pre-edits don't make sense is if you are on like way higher ping. Like I'd say anything over like 50 to 60. In that case, you're probably gonna mess up a bunch and be like building with pre-edits in your builds like this. So if you're below 50 ping, make sure this is set to off. If you're above 50 ping, make sure this is set to on. Turbo building, obviously we need that on, and auto confirm edits, I set this to both. Everyone used to think that auto confirming your edits was way slower, but turns out now that we're a couple years into testing it, it's actually fast. Pros like Booga, I think Clicks, even Peterbot uses auto confirm edits turned on. And the reason this makes editing faster is simply because it's less buttons to click. With this setting turned off, you have to click your edit button, you have to select your tile, and then you have to click your confirm button. That's 3 different actions every single time you want to edit one build. However, with auto confirm on, all you have to do is click your edit button, select the tile, and once you let go of the tile, it automatically confirms for you. So now it's only 2 actions compared to 3, which is obviously faster. Now once we get past that, we have simple edit. And this is an interesting setting because some players should be using it and some players should. I think that learning building and editing on keyboard and mouse is way easier than learning building and editing on controller. So if you really want to grind and try to become like borderline pro, then in that case, I definitely would not use simple edit. But if you don't play the game a lot and you're really just playing to try to get a couple wins here and there and say you're not the best at building and editing, I would turn simple edit on. I mean, I would not be embarrassed to use simple edit. What you can do with it is actually incredible. And there's some players that have already gotten incredibly good on simple edit. It'll be a little funky to learn at first, but that's when you just sit in creative and do like this a bunch of times. However, personally, I'm one of those players that plays the game a lot and really likes to see myself improve, so me, I'm gonna turn simple edit off. Again, it's just more of a preference thing, and then this is the rest of this tab. Over to game UI, this is complete personal preference. So that's kind of what this whole top tab is, but once you go below this, don't mess with any of these other settings. These are kind of important settings that you need to see. Then this is a tab completely for controller players, so you don't need to worry about that. And this is the keyboard mouse sensitivities tab. Now, personally, when I really tried to get into learning keyboard mouse, I spent 40 hours in one single week just fully grinding keyboard mouse, trying to get as good as I possibly can in 1 week. And when I did that, pretty much coming from being a complete beginner, this sensitivity was the one that worked the absolute best for me, and who I copied it from is Booga. So the sensitivity is 6.4% on x-axis, 6.4% on y-axis, 45% on targeting and scope. The building and editing sensitivity are just 100%. The zoom scaling is on legacy. And then for double movement binds, it's 70 on forward diagonal, 90 on strafe, and 135 on backward diagonal. And what I found in using the sensitivity is that no matter how good or bad I've been at keyboard and mouse, this sensitivity has been great for me. Even as a complete beginner, this sensitivity was allowing me to hit some pretty good shots basically right off the bat. And then I started to get a little bit better and a little bit better, and by the end of that week, my aim was insane. For only playing on keyboard and mouse for one singular week, I think this is crazy aim to have. And obviously, if Booga is using it, then it's good enough to work all the way up to a pro level. Now, a super important thing to mention is that you have to make sure that your mouse is set to an 800 DPI. Now, if you didn't know, your DPI is not a Fortnite setting. Your DPI is in your actual PC or mouse settings. So what you have to do is look up the name of your mouse, look up how to change the DPI. And as you can see right here, for this specific mouse, I can change the DPI from 100 all the way up to 25,600. So on only 100 DPI, you can see how far I'm actually moving my mouse and how little on my screen it's moving. But if I turn this all the way up to the max, you can see how little I'm moving my mouse on my desk and how far my mouse cursor is moving on my screen. So as you can imagine, that completely changes how your sensitivity functions. And that's why if you're going to copy the sensitivity, you have to make sure you're on an 800 DPI. That's literally the only way this sensitivity will actually work. Now, probably even more important than the sensitivity are the keyboard and mouse binds. Now again, just like sensitivity, basically every pro uses different binds. Some are technically more optimal than others, but really what you're looking for is binds that are really comfortable to use. So when I spent that week last year really trying to get down keyboard and mouse, really trying to get good at it, I tried Peterbot's binds, then I tried Clix's binds, then I tried Booga's binds. On each pro's binds, there was something that I didn't like that I just couldn't get used to. So the binds that feel the most natural to me are obviously moving with the standard keys, jumping with spacebar, all that's just default. I actually sprint with the side of my mouse. Usually on your mouse, there'll be a couple of buttons, some have more than others. So I sprint with my top mouse button. I don't really use auto run, but it's just all the way over on equals key if I do need it. Crouch and slide is down here on left control. Reload is easy to remember, it's on R. Use, which is like reviving teammates, picking up items, searching chests, all of that I use E, or I scroll up on my mouse, so mouse wheel up. And honestly, I rarely click E because on scroll wheel pickup, you can pick up weapons so fast. So if you're on mouse and keyboard, I highly recommend turning use to scroll wheel up. And for my pickaxe and all my weapon slots, I literally just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now below that is maybe the most important binds in all of keyboard and mouse, which are the building binds. So crouching and sliding again is on left control even while building. My wall is on Q, my floor is on V, my stairs are on C, and my roof is on left shift. To rotate the buildings, again, pretty simple, I click R. To change the material I'm building with, I click the right click on my mouse. To edit, I click F, but if you want scroll wheel reset, which is one of the biggest benefits of being on keyboard and mouse, then you need to set building edit to scroll wheel down and reset building edit to scroll wheel down. Essentially what this allows you to do is edit with F whenever you're editing normally, but then when you want to reset a build, instead of clicking F, all you have to do is scroll down one time to get into editing mode and then scroll down another time to reset. As you would imagine, this makes it so you can reset builds insanely fast and basically effortlessly. I don't even need my hand on my keyboard to be able to reset that fast. So really in your binds, worry about movement, combat, targeting, building, and then miscellaneous down here. Just basically make sure you have a map bind set. Every single one of these other tabs you shouldn't have to mess with. Default should be completely fine. Now I know that a lot of you watching this are probably keyboard and mouse beginners because tons of controller players are switching over, which personally I'm not switching to keyboard and mouse, but I understand why players are switching over. It is truly better. It's way easier to get way better at the game, and for a lot of people it's more fun. So if you are one of those people, I have 5 key tips that will help you get good at keyboard and mouse fast. Starting with tip number 1, play a ton of creative. When you're still in the early stages of learning keyboard, it's all about repetition and building muscle memory. That basically means that you need to free build a lot. You need to find a player that's similar in skill to you and 1v1 them a lot. Which, by the way, this is a great map for both of those things. And essentially, the more time you spend in creative on mouse and keyboard, the faster you'll improve. Everyone wants some secret hack, but really it's just about playing a lot of creative. However, another thing that you can do is tip number 2, which is watch keyboard and mouse players to learn. Chances are you probably already watched some good keyboard and mouse players on YouTube or on Twitch, but the next time you're watching a pro live stream, instead of just being amazed by what they do, actually try to learn from it. Like when you're watching Clicks or Peterbot, take note of how slowly or how fast they play out their fights, see what type of peaks and piece control they use, and when you see them do something that you really like, whether it's some type of new move or even just some new exploit that you've never seen, clip it and try to replicate it in creative. A lot of these seemingly advanced moves that these pros are doing aren't actually that complicated. They're pretty simple. You just have to learn how to do them. Tip number 3 is to make sure your setup is comfortable. If you're playing on controller, you can kind of game from wherever you want and be just fine. But on keyboard and mouse, you basically have to be at a desk. And while playing keyboard and mouse, I've found that if my chair is too high or even too low, or my monitor is too close, or my keyboard is too slanted, literally any of those things can and have made my shoulders or wrist or neck all start to hurt. So the key is to set your monitor and chair to heights where you're completely comfortable and don't feel any pain. And then as soon as you're completely comfortable while you're just grinding it out, you'll be ready to go. The next tip number 4, is to make a competition out of improvement. Personally, nothing motivates me more than a good challenge, and if you're a competitive person, that might just be what you need too. Like find a friend that's a similar skill level to you and set a competition on like whoever gets to Unreal first gets a prize, or if you beat them in a 1v1 by say a certain date, you get to pick their Fortnite name. Those are 2 just really simple examples, but any sort of competition can really boost how fast you improve. And tip number 5 is to stay patient and trust the process. The worst thing you can do is compare yourself to others and how fast they got good. Like you might see old controller players that pick up keyboard and mouse and they're better than you've ever been, and they've only been playing on it for like 2 weeks. There's a lot of reasons why that happens, with the main reason being that they were already a pro on controllers, so they already know the best way to play the game. They already know the best strategies. Literally the only new thing that they have to learn is which buttons to actually click on keyboard and mouse to do those same actions. So that means that every player learns at different speeds, and the real key is to keep at it and not to give up. I hope this video helped you out in some way. Make sure to subscribe if it did, and thanks so much for watching.